Hey guys, I've just wrapped up a very interesting interview with Diana Hart where we dove into what it was really like growing up in probably the most legendary family in professional wrestling, the Hart family, and the unique pressures that came with it. We also gained some honest and unfiltered thoughts on her brother Bret Hart, including his reputation of, let's just say, never holding back on his opinions.
I think that Shawn and Vince were sleeping with each other.
And on a more serious note, Diana also opened up about the heartbreaking loss of her brother Owen and how that tragedy impacted the family behind the scenes. We also touch on the Vince McMahon allegations and what she makes of everything that's come out, as well as WWE as a product today. And of course, this interview is largely about the life of Davey Boy Smith, the British Bulldog, his incredible career, and what he was really like both in and outside of the ring. At certain times during the interview, you'll hear a slight echo coming from Diana's side after I was speaking or while I was speaking. And unfortunately, this is something which we could not control. And fortunately for us, it didn't happen during the entire interview. But in any case, hope you enjoy the interview and this unique perspective into the world of professional wrestling. Diana, welcome. Thanks for your time. I really appreciate it and looking forward to talking to you. How have you been?
I'm just fine. Glad to meet you.
Yeah, definitely.
Virtually.
So, you've got such a unique perspective on the wrestling industry. I mean, you grew up in probably the most, I guess, the royal family of professional wrestling families, the Hart family. What was it like growing up in that house?
Oh, it was great. It was such a unique life. It really was. The
Yeah,
house, the so many things. This great big beautiful house that was built in 1905, and then 12 kids, and the wrestling being run right out of the house, and the personalities of my mom and dad, and then all that brought through wrestling. It was really it was a grand life, through thick and thin. I just feel lucky to have been, and I'm number 11 of the 12 kids,
yeah,
so different, a baby girl of the four girls and eight boys. So if I'd been born, the oldest, but different dynamics, of course.
right.
So it was so unique, and it kind of, uh, I thought it was a great life, despite, everything. So glad to be where I am right now.
That's great. I mean, and look, how did you and Davey meet? Obviously, your husband, your late husband was the British Bulldog. I was a huge fan of him growing up, and I think my earliest memory, well, we'll get to my earliest memories of him, but how did you guys meet?
Well, I first saw his picture in the program, my dad's body press program,
Yeah.
and I was quite, well, his picture stopped, I don't know, it just captured me right away. And man, I was kind of, had my ear close to the ground when he was coming to Calgary, and that was in the early summer, I guess, or late spring. So around May of 2000, or sorry, 1981.
Mm.
And my brother Bruce brought him up to the house, and I believe they were going on their way to Red Deer. And
Oh,
he
yeah.
brought him up. They had to get something first. Bruce had to get, I don't know what it was, something at the house to take to Red Deer. So I kind of made a beeline for Davey because I had him all to myself, and he had just been in South Africa prior to coming to Calgary, and he had a little bite on his arm, like right on his like his bicep, his left one, and so anyway, I was kind of interested in that too. I like things like that, taking stitches out, or
Right.
you know, I'm usually interested in stuff like that. So that was how I started the conversation, and uh, I started going down to the wrestling to see him, which I wasn't supposed to do. just, you know, I kind of stood out like a sore thumb because I'd never really been there before. And then all of a sudden I'm at the wrestling and my dad was like, what are you doing here? And I had some excuse that I, you know, had to give my brother Ross something. And um, yeah, so I was made a point of talking to Davey, and he said, he just mentioned that he needed a ride home, that he wanted to watch this movie. He was staying at my brother Brett's, and he wanted to watch the movie The Longest Yard with Burt Reynolds, and he had
Yeah.
had his match already. So I drove him home in this great big 72 Eldorado convertible, which was a big car for him to be in, and it was kind of like riding in a boat. And he was I think impressed. I don't know, maybe that's not quite the word, but that I was driving this big car. And yeah, then kind of the rest is history from there.
Did your dad discourage his daughters from dating wrestlers?
Hmm. He did. He did, and he didn't. Like my sister Ellie, my oldest sister. So
Yeah.
Ellie's number six of the kids, five boys, and then they had Ellie. Um, and Jim Neidhart, Jim the Anvil Neidhart,
Mm.
who had come up to work for my dad around, I think around 78.
Yeah.
He liked Ellie. He was quite attracted to Ellie, and she really wasn't that interested in him. She was just, you know, I think she's really artistic. I think she wanted to go out with somebody more artistic and less athletic.
Right.
And but my dad was quite excited about the possible you know, reunion or possible union of Ellie and Jim, and you know
Yeah.
what great kids they'd have. And I think he was thinking along those lines right away. But that eventually um, blossomed, and Jim appealed to Ellie's love for animals and helped her find her turtle that had disappeared. And that was a kind of a cute story because Jim, the turtle really did disappear, and Jim said, "Well, let's follow the turtle tracks." And it
Yeah.
was like, "Oh, you know, don't be so silly." But that's how they found the turtle. He fought through the grass because he broke the grass going wherever he was on his way to. He must have had maybe the turtle had a date or something. I don't know, but he got out of his area and was walking, or you know, on four legs. And so Jim found the turtle, and that kind of melted Ellie's heart. And yeah, so my dad was kind of excited about Ellie and Jim, but as far as I went, I'm not quite sure what my mom and dad had in mind, but I do know it was like the daughters don't cavort with the wrestlers.
Mm.
Um, and I'm not sure what they had in mind for me, but whatever I did get a couple of dates through brothers, and they weren't really. I don't know, Van. They just didn't really.
Say,
But my mom was excited about it. You know, oh, he's in college and he's going to be a teacher, and I was like, oh, okay. But I wanted I wanted somebody who wasn't going to criticize wrestling and who would understand, you know, cat fur on cat fur on your pant legs, and
yeah.
you know that your car doesn't have the defrost doesn't work on your windshield, and you're gonna still drive the car instead of I don't know. It just I wanted someone that was gritty.
I mean, does that still, did you guys go through a lot of that with regards to, growing up, people at school would say, yeah, but it's all fake.
Yeah, I it's it's a contentious issue for me when I know people maybe don't realize that it is such a contentious issue when
Yeah.
they'll know me well, and then they'll say, oh yeah, that's Diana's son, and he does that fake wrestling.
Yeah.
I'm like, Wow. I thought you knew me better than that. That
Right.
Harry doesn't do that fake.
Yeah.
Nothing, I think Mick Foley has the book. Uh, it's fake to everybody but the wrestlers or something. He's got it better, captured it way better. But it when I was growing up, it was really um, I just saw how, from a bird's eye view, how hard my mom and dad worked in different ways. But my dad being on the road and handling everything, my mom being at home on her own with the kids. I mean, my mom always said the kids helped her out a lot, like as the older ones could drive and stuff. But between the two of them, they never did anything that was fake. And
Yeah.
my but just that my dad was an amateur wrestler. Like he qualified for the Olympics, and then World War II wiped him out when he would have uh, competed. And he wasn't a fake wrestler, and I never saw, and all this stuff that, I mean, it's perpetrated by the media,
Mm.
what they put on the news, or because I hear about it at school. It's like they get it from the news, even when I was little, about the wrestling and
Yeah. Right.
just the kind of a almost like a low class ebb to it. And I just saw my mom and dad and what they were producing as the most they just ran it was just so upright. They never cheated anybody.
Mm.
Uh, yeah, so it was. And today, even though it seems like it's commonplace to for people to talk openly about how when they're reflecting on their match from a WrestleMania or something, and two wrestlers on a podcast talking openly about the how it all went down and stuff. But I don't know. I'd still like to see some mystery left in it, and it's like the magician telling everyone how he does his tricks. But
Exactly. Now, 100%. I mean, the thing is with, I mean, they talk about kayfabe, right? Kayfabe was a thing back then. It was kind of like the law back then with professional
Mhm.
wrestling. And I mean, to me, I mean, even I guess growing up, you know that it was, some of the things were scripted. The athleticism also, I mean, the athleticism and the bumps these guys took were real. Like I said, you can script wrestling, you can't script the injuries. So it's still a
No.
real sports entertainment. And I guess with shows that have now come out like WWE Unreal, it just blows my mind how the industry secrets are just completely out there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how you build back from that. Like, where does it go from there? Like, and then these poor wrestlers are still, like you just said, they're still getting hurt,
Yeah.
yet it's all been exposed, like they're not legitimate. And it's, and I know firsthand how real the injuries are, and the wrestling that I grew up with, everything was improvised. They might know a little bit about something, or they did the match before in another town or something, but it was improvised. There was, um, just so it's hard for nowadays. It seems like it's hard if you don't know how to read it, if you can't read a script, or if you can't memorize a bunch of lines. It's like, or memorize all these moves in the ring. And I'm like,
There's
when
no
I grew up,
there's no authenticity to it, in my opinion. It's
no, it's
yeah.
like wrestling shouldn't be choreographed. It's
Mm.
not. That's not. That was what I really miss it. Or I that to see guys, like when I was growing up, I would could defend that with all my heart, that two guys would go in a ring, like let's just put Davey and a guy from Japan that came to work for Stampede Wrestling, and he's going to wrestle on Friday night, third match, and they're going to televise 8 minutes of it. You know, they just start the camera rolling. You might not even get the ending of the match in that 8 minutes, and it was enough to get people to come down, though, if they like that, or whatever match it was. The interviews in the ring were usually one interview before the match. If it was a bigger match, it would be like just say it was Dynamite Kid against Bret Hart. They'd have Dynamite would go in the ring with John Foley, J.R. Foley, and they do an interview about how they're going to beat Bret, and then Bret would come out and do his interview, come out a different door, and they wouldn't like be passing in the night, and Bret would do his interview. They'd have the match, then they do a live interview right after, and they're sweating and their adrenaline's pumping, and they're just speaking from their heart and what they want to see next week, and then that's what I miss. I mean, I don't really even know what to say about today. I mean, and they work so hard, even with the non-improvising. They work so hard, but I just feel like it's the mystique is gone. They've shown them all.
I mean, they've shown everything. I mean, the
What it looks
latest thing,
like.
they've shown how gorilla position works. The referees have got earpieces, et cetera, that type of stuff. It's kind of
Yeah.
like, you like watching a Hollywood movie. You don't necessarily want to know how it was made. Just watch the movie
Yeah.
type thing.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
in any case, yeah, I mean, and the thing is, the cat's out the bag. I don't think you can go back to it. I mean, I remember back in the day, the curtain call with Shawn Michaels, Razor, Diesel, and those guys was a big thing.
Yeah. It's like, I don't know why they want to do that. It's kind of like killing the beast. Like it was. I don't know where they go, where you go from.
Hmm.
So you show them everything. It's
Yeah, it's strange. But do you still miss the old house?
Yeah. I go by there. It's bittersweet for me. My sister goes by a lot. She's friends with people who are staying there now, and
Okay.
they're really nice people. And they've got a little dog, and it's funny that this big house and they have no kids, just a dog, and but a very, very sweet little dog. But I got to go through the house through my sister, and it was just, they're not the ones who changed it, but whoever bought it did a lot of changes. So the kitchen isn't where the kitchen was, and it's no longer our home. So
Yeah, yeah.
I can't say anything about it, but I mean, I can't. I have no right. But I showed them one thing though in the basement. It's the incinerator, and it's this big brick thing. It's huge. I think that would have been where they burned things, because they wouldn't have had garbage pickup. I don't even know what they would have burned back then, because they probably used everything. But it had been all drywalled up.
Is that where the dungeon was? Or
Yeah.
the legendary
Kind
dungeon?
of, yeah, in the basement. It was in a different room, sort of kitty corner. But it's really neat. There was a big cast iron door, and you could open it. You could have a fire in there all year round and burn whatever. It's just, but they didn't even know. I said, because it wasn't drywalled flush to the wall, there was like 8 inches or a foot of space. And I said, oh, that's where the incinerator is. And she looked, and she had no idea. So I said, well, that's, for me to say, well, you should take the drywall off it and let it shine.
Yeah.
they might not be incinerator people, and I am. So.
Well, okay, so I mean, back to Davey. SummerSlam '92 sold out Wembley Stadium. Memories of that. I mean, it's regarded as one of the best SummerSlam matches of all time. I agree. Um, what were your memories of that? Because you were in the middle.
Yes,
Yeah.
I was. I was very worried, legitimately worried about Davey's leg
Mm,
because he had a staph infection.
yeah.
So, you can get these, like the flesh-eating disease, that's what it was, or flesh-eating infection. Um, you can get it from a bang. You don't have to get it from an open wound.
Yeah.
So he had wrestled Mike Sharp, Iron Mike Sharp, who he had also wrestled in Calgary for Stampede Wrestling. Um, just history there. Mike Sharp's father worked with my dad and worked in Stampede Wrestling too. And it's kind of neat how the generations um, cascade, But so he wrestled Mike Sharp in Worcester, Massachusetts. And he called me, and I was up in Calgary at that time doing interviews for SummerSlam.
Mm,
So they flew me up rather than me staying in Florida where we were living. They flew me up, and there'd be, I think the idea was maybe a family interview. Like they ended up doing Bruce, my brother Bruce, and my mom and dad and me, but they never did get us, that I recall, they didn't get us in a group.
All Davey seems to say is that he's doing it for me and the kids. Bret's obsessed with keeping the belt. Davey's consumed with winning it.
But anyway, I went up to Calgary to do these interviews rather than stay in Florida, and I remember the phone rang pretty late, and I figured it was Davey because I just had a hunch, and I answered, and he's in the office, the old Stampede Wrestling office, and he just said he had banged his knee and kind of felt weird, but he didn't think much of it. He equated it to like if you bang your elbow and it goes hot
yeah.
and numb and tingly, but and then he was gonna go to Portland, Maine the next day, or drive there that night after he hung up with me, so to do TV. So that was TV, and this was the next day was TV. So they had superstars back then and prime time, and I think there was one other show that they do all these tapings and do like 3 TV shows out of all these 2 days of tapings. So he got to the show the next day and was really sick, hot, like sweating, and his leg was getting really tight and swollen and red. And Vince McMahon said, go to the hospital and get that looked at.
Mm,
And he did, and came back, he got x-rays, and they couldn't tell much on an x-ray because it wasn't bone, it was flesh. So
yeah.
nothing suspect would show up in an x-ray. But they did mention that, as just for a note, they did mention that he did have some knee damage, probably from his years leading up to, because of the stuff he was doing even before I met him in 81. He was already doing lots of stuff. He had his two, before I met him, I mean, they fixed his teeth, but he had his 2 front teeth drop kicked out. But it's funny, Van, it was like the eye teeth.
Mm, yeah, yeah.
Like it wasn't the 2 front, it was the 2 next. So one here, like a bowling, like
Right.
when you're bowling, it's the 2 outside pins, not the 2 inside that the ball knocks down. Anyway, yeah, he had his share of injuries before I ever met him. So yeah, so anyway, this was rapidly growing out of control. But we didn't know what it was. And it was, thank God, a doctor, Davey's chiropractor, referred him to a doctor in about an hour and a half outside of where we were all living, and he was pretty sharp. He just said, I don't know what this is, but I have a kind of like I read about it when I was becoming a doctor, but I've never seen it. And anyway, he said, I got to withdraw a bunch of fluid, and it was this like watery reddish pink fluid, and there was some pus in it. And I actually, I mentioned earlier that I'm not squeamish, and I like,
Yeah.
taking stitches out, or you know, things like that don't bother me at all. But I actually fainted when he was withdrawing the stuff. And it was so funny because Davey's like in this excruciating pain, and I'm the one that faints. But anyway, they took the tests at the end. He shot Davey full of a bunch of stuff, and he said, I hope one of these things is going to work. I don't know what it is. You don't know what antibiotic to match with what the infection is. So
I mean,
anyway,
that's serious. I mean, the UFC events UFC matches get canceled because the guy's got a staph infection. So it's serious.
And the antibiotics that they put him on, like I've heard that with the UFC fighters as well, as if they've been on a rounds of antibiotics, how it can affect your stamina and stuff. And Davey was on like a bunch of like he was eating them. There were so many 3 times a day, and for 6 weeks. And so that was when I was there for the match. I mean, everything it was overwhelming. I've never seen that many. I mean, I was at WrestleMania in Pontiac, Michigan in '87, and that was the biggest crowd I've ever been in front of. That I'm aware of, 93,000 people, but I wasn't a part of it. I mean, Davey and Dynamite and Tito Santana, I believe, were against the Hart Foundation and Danny Davis, and Jesse Ventura came down. They had to. The pitch was so long that they had to get wheeled down in a cart. And it was funny because Jesse Ventura had to take Matilda back, but he had to carry her. It was kind of cute. And, just, again, the improvising, you don't think about it like, well, what do we do with Matilda? Well, Jesse, you got to take Matilda back. So he took her back, but,
And now Matilda, just for our viewers watching, so Matilda was the actual British Bulldog. It was.
Yeah, she was the first one. And my daughter Georgia has from that bloodline, Matilda. So little Matilda.
Oh wow!
And she's really just such a sweet dog. Different color than the original. She's more of a fawn and white with smoldering black eyes. And Davey and Dynamite's Matilda was more red. But she was a good old girl. And then she hated the megaphone, and that was a fluke. Davey was playing around with Jimmy Hart's megaphone in the back, and it was like electronic. I think there was a battery in it, and he was playing with it, and it had this high pitch like whistle, and Matilda was like, and she didn't like that. So Davey's just playing around with it, and she saw where it was, and then right away she just developed this hatred for that megaphone. So when Jimmy Hart would go in the ring and he'd pull the megaphone out and she'd just go right after him, just like
Federation Tag Team Champions against each other.
And Matilda going right after that megaphone in the mouth of the South. Jimmy Hart.
Like honestly, you couldn't have planned that. It just happened, and it morphed into something that the fans really loved seeing. And then Jimmy Hart would run out of the ring, and actually, like I'm digressing here from what we were talking about with SummerSlam, but the manager Slick, I don't know if you remember him, he actually broke his arm trying to get away from Matilda. So because she kind of got into the rhythm of just going after whoever was on that other side, and if she could get a hold of your pant leg or something. And she'd never do anything too harsh, but shake your pant leg and stuff. But Slick was trying to get away from her, and he ended up breaking his wrist, not his arm. I think it was his wrist, but funny stuff there. But yeah, anyway, about SummerSlam, that was just one of the greatest things that I was privileged to be a part of. And my concern was Davey's leg, because he hadn't done anything since July. The actual last match he had was July 20th. And, he hadn't, and with that, recovering from it, you can't do any cardio because, it was in his leg, but the cardio would have stimulated the blood flow, and then the infection would start eating the tissue where the blood's flowing to.
So it could escalate, basically, yeah.
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 So all he could do was just lie in bed, and he couldn't even bend his leg. It was so swollen for many weeks. Well, I don't know, 3 weeks. It was so swollen. And I know he was worried about that too, but he and Bret pulled together just one of the greatest matches. They had worked with each other before as the Hart Foundation and against the Bulldogs, and done stuff in Calgary as well. And they sure appreciated each other's abilities, and it was just something. I'm just really blessed to have been a part of that, right at ringside, and to see that in Davey's home country. And his mom and dad were so, they were well, just to say that they were proud of him doesn't even
I mean, look, to sell out the stadium of Wembley size is, I mean, it takes some doing. Not anyone can do that.
They sold it out in record time, like less than 11 hours.
Yeah.
And they broke the British Telecom phone lines went down because there were so many people phoning at the same time to get tickets. And I think before that, Madonna and Michael Jackson, for sure Michael Jackson had the record for how quick it had sold out. But
I mean, that's amazing.
yeah.
Now, obviously, of late, your brother Bret has made some comments. It kind of seems like it's kind of the norm. Whenever you see a thumbnail of Bret on YouTube, it's kind of become like, here we go again. It's Goldberg, it's Vince.
I got hurt by Goldberg, and he called me 8 months after it happened and told me that he was sorry, which really was irrelevant at that point. I think that Shawn and Vince were sleeping with each other.
To me, it's such a shame because, I mean, Bret Hart has such a legendary career. And because of technology today and the interviews he's giving, the new generation are kind of like, who didn't grow up watching him, are kind of like listening to him, and it's just kind of whining the whole time. And to me personally, he's kind of tarnishing his legacy a little bit. And I just don't get why.
I don't know. I don't know if he has confabulation after his stroke, although he and I have rammed heads in the past as well. He was making some remarks about Davey. Apparently, I never even knew about any of these. The first I ever heard about him making claims that the match was all him, and that Davey was. It's just ridiculous.
The match with Davey and Wembley, you can see lots of times in that match where I'm talking in the match because I didn't have any choice. I had to do the thinking for both of us.
I mean, I'm gonna talk like I'm trying to be cool here, but like, come on, man. Come on, man. How does one person do? You didn't do, Bret. That was 50. That was, you both gave 100%.
Yeah.
And you both are 50% part of match that was 100% great.
Oh, you can't do it alone.
And you can't. I don't. And it's like when he's talking, it's like somebody telling you when you're tasting the soup and it's sweet, and they're telling you, no, it's actually salty.
Yeah.
And they are like, okay, well, Bret Hart says it's salty, so Bret Hart says that Davey was doing crack cocaine for the entire summer, which is totally false, and it's not fair to Davey or Jim Neidhart, who was trying to help me take care of Davey. Like, he couldn't even get out of bed. He couldn't move. And this idea that Davey was, just hopping in the car and driving over to the Neidharts to do crack cocaine all summer. And it's just like, so you couldn't have done that match. You couldn't have had that masterpiece if you're not 100% there. And I know Davey was anxious. He didn't know how he was going to perform. It just shows how the intestinal fortitude, how
yeah,
and I am so grateful that Bret was able to help him.
Yeah.
And Davey was able to help Bret to, I know Bret wasn't sick. Davey was sick, but he wasn't, I don't know anybody, if you come off even like 3 weeks of not, let's just say you take a week off from practice and then you go back in there, whatever it is you're practicing for, you're gonna be a little stiff or rusty. I don't care how many years you've been doing it. So Davey hasn't done anything since July 20th till August 29th. He's been lying on in bed, well, until we got to England. I mean, it's not fair. I don't know why Bret says it, but I don't know if he's got something like a bunch of different stories mixed up that from Davey at this time and Davey later and Jim at another point, and he's got it all jumbled into this. But I have heard from the these people online that aren't maybe aren't supportive of my facts. I mean, I got the hospital records, and and they'll say, because I said Bret never brought this up to Davey, and then they'll say, oh, well, he did. He said it in an interview in 1999. Like, okay, well, I don't know. I wasn't I didn't even have a phone in 1999.
I mean,
I wasn't on the internet, but if it was brought up in an interview, I wasn't aware of it, and Davey wasn't aware of it. But Bret never brought it up to Davey's face, and that. So I guess I can clarify that here. He never said this to Davey's face, that because it didn't happen.
I just think, regardless of the fact that, well, first of all, I mean, there are a lot of guys on the internet that have the inside scoop. Who knows how, but they do. And I guess the thing to me is just, first of all, it's family. And second of all, I mean, in terms of Davey Boy, Jim Neidhart, family, first and foremost. Second of all, they've since passed. Third of all, I mean, it just doesn't seem, it's just not the best look. And I mean, with regards to Davey, I mean, Goldberg has been a punching bag for, not for Davey, sorry, for Bret for a long time. I just don't know why Bret, a PA person, handler, to say, focus on the positives.
Mm-hmm.
I just it amazes me how someone, even from WWE, hasn't reached out and said, look, you're busy tarnishing your own legacy because this is all you're talking about. Because these interviews that get done don't focus on great reminiscences about Stone Cold in WrestleMania 13 or whatever it was. Although it was match of the year now and was locked into the Hall of Fame and all that stuff, Bret never really speaks about it. But in any case, moving on, the one angle and how I became a fan of wrestling, of the WWE, back then it was WWE. 1996, there was an angle between Davey and Shawn Michaels. You were involved as well. And I mean, and that was back in the day when we had VHS tapes. And I actually had a buddy of mine. He taped King of the Ring 96, which was in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Mr. Perfect was the guest referee. Jimmy Cornette was the manager. Owen was commentating. I mean, what was that experience like? And who came up with that angle?
I don't know who came up with it actually, but it was funny. I couldn't hear what Owen was saying till I later got home. I think my son had taped it from our VHS at home, but Owen's commentating was hilarious.
Yeah,
it was. That was that Hart sarcasm at its finest.
Yeah.
Oh, he was good in that, and Mr. Perfect was spot on, and Jim Cornette, he was always good. He was so demonstrative and colorful, and Shawn and Davey. I mean, those two had great matches. I wish they could have worked with each other more. But I didn't really know what possessed me to grab the belt out of Gorilla Monsoon, because I didn't get told to do that, but I grabbed the belt. I was starting to get into that role a little bit. It kind of spun around. Originally, I remember when they were started to bring me in, which was upon Davey's request, to bring me in as sort of like a Miss Elizabeth type.
Right.
But it didn't, I mean, it didn't go that way. Then it was, they were going to do something with me and Davey and Bret this was starting around after the In Your House in Hershey. And I think Bret was starting he wanted to do some acting and do, I think someone had approached him about being in Lonesome Dove, or his agent got him an audition. And anyway, they were going to do something with Davey and Bret. And I was going to attack Bret with a bunch of really thorny roses, like a whole long stem roses, like I'm going to present them to him. And that might have been Jim Cornette's idea, or it could have been Bruce Pritchard's, but I think it was kind of kiboshed on my family's end, possibly my dad. I don't know. I mean, my dad wasn't a part of, it's not like he was, consulted on storylines, but I think it was sort of like taking it a little more seriously than, it's like, well, Diana can't attack Bret. It's just that's kind of like when I started going out with Davey. It was like, well, no, Diana can't go out with Davey. It's just, that's just the way it is. And, we'll go on to the next day. And I think if I had fought for that more, or Davey and I had fought for that more, it might have happened, but it didn't. And then I think Davey was feeling like now, well, what do we do with Diana? Because she's like, we fly her out to TV tapings and she just sits there. I mean, it was really nice to be there. Everyone was very accommodating to me.
Yeah.
But I'm just sitting there. I'm not Marlena, I'm not Sable. They were both getting introduced around that same time. And
I guess Sunny as well, yeah. Well, she was
and
right.
Sunny too, yeah.
Right, yeah.
And I was different than all of them. And I remember Bret pointed out, he said, you're not you don't have a fictitious name. You're going as Diana Hart, and
Yeah.
you got to remember that with, with Dad when he's so proud of everything, and who was going to know back then, fast forward, that Bret was going to be one of the biggest heels that they had at that time with the.
Yeah.
So anyway, I remember doing the getting just step by step brought into the thing with Sean, and Jim Cornette explained a little bit that night, and I was like, okay. And it's kind of a funny story here, Van. So Bruce Pritchard is he does really good impersonations.
Yeah.
So my dad and Owen's the prankster. So
Yes.
Jim Cornette was in one of these office rooms at TV. They had all of them. They're just like at the back of these arenas. It's like rooms with phones and offices. And so it was just coming out about that, it was going to look like Sean and I were like possibly having a little something or other going on behind the scenes, and Davey didn't know about it. And I know Davey was like, not like, he would have done whatever they asked, but
Yeah.
I don't think he was that thrilled with that, because he's like, well, that makes me look like an idiot because my wife's the one that's having the affair on me, and I'm going after Sean. But
Yeah.
and it's not, pretend, it's really my wife. So, but anyway, so Bruce Pritchard, he's in another room, and he phones at either the office phone in the next room, and Bruce Pritchard knows that Jim Cornette's in there, and he answers the phone because it could be Vince or anyone calling from down the hall. So Jim Cornette answers the phone, and it's my dad. It actually was my dad, and he's talking about this goddamn, because my dad would say that a lot. This goddamn angle with Sean and Diana, and so Jim Cornette actually thought it was Bruce Pritchard. So he starts really embellishing and going on about. He's getting almost like graphic about Diana's going to be French kissing Sean on TV, but it's getting like very in great detail, and my dad's just going nuts. And Jim Cornette I think there was a couple other guys in there, and he's thinking, oh, it's Owen.
It's a rub,
Owen.
yeah.
And then Owen walks in, and Jim Cornette was just like, oh, I'm sorry, Stu. I'm sorry. I just backpedaling. But actually, that's what my dad was. He said, my daughter's not going to be involved in any of this. And then, so we had to have a meeting with Vince, and he said, well, we'll change the direction of it. And Davey and Sean will do we'll do this and that. And it kind of got laid to rest. I would like to have done a lot more, but they kind of put me into tag, doing stuff with Owen and Davey as a tag when they were a tag team, but they had Jim Cornette, so they didn't really need me. Like,
Right.
I mean, but funny, the stuff that I'd hear at ringside, it's not that much different than the stuff that I hear that people who don't like me on social media. The stuff that you'd hear shouted at you from somebody in the crowd.
Well, I can imagine, because Sean was babyface back then.
Yeah.
So he was the new generation. He's new champion. Sean actually said in a shoot interview done with him in 2000, Sean was actually quoted as saying that he thinks his matches with Davey were extremely underrated, and he would have liked to have worked a longer angle with him, because he was the first guy that only worried about having a good match. He didn't worry about all the other stuff, and that about being champion, about winning. As long as they had a good match, that's what Davey cared. I think that's quite a big compliment from the guy who many consider today is one of the top, the goats of the industry.
I thought that, I mean, David was always really easy to work with and a lot of fun, but he was a great worker and really a great deal of fun to work with because he wasn't hung up on anything. He was the first guy that I got to work with that was more concerned about just having a good match like I was.
Yeah. I appreciate him appreciating Davey for that and all that Davey brought to the table. I heard that Davey was, after he lost the belt to Sean in Birmingham, the European belt.
Yeah. Gonna get to that.
That he was supposed to face Sean again later, like 9 months down the road, and there would be a return to revisiting all of that. But at that time, that was what they wanted, and Davey did it. But that was a different match than what they had different matches. I mean, they never were the same. I do enjoy watching Sean's matches. I've seen him wrestle all kinds, and it's very suspenseful and entertaining and makes me believe in wrestling. I mean, those are things I think that Davey and my family would like to see, or would say qualifies as good wrestling or good wrestlers.
The Screwjob, obviously, it's been it's been dissected a lot. There's a conspiracy theory that it was all a work. What are your thoughts about it?
That it wasn't a work, not that.
Do you think it was justified? Did the company did Vince do the right thing? I guess.
It sure hurt Bret.
Yeah.
I don't know that I don't think they realized he would. I don't know if they realized that he would retaliate the way he would. But when you're provoked, you do things. I mean, that's what I did in defense of Davey, and I know that's not what all of this is about. But sometimes you do things, you lash out in defense, and because you're hurt and you've been wronged, and I know it really hurt Bret. I remember when it happened, though. It was I had just come home from Vancouver, and it was like I hadn't talked to anybody yet. I just, and my dad was wondering what was going on too, and we were just like, oh no. And then when I talked to Davey later, he's like, yeah, I was, he hurt his knee pulling Bret off Vince. Oh, so Shane McMahon, who's Vince's son. So Bret said to Vince, if you're here when I get out of the shower, I'm going to punch you out or something, or punch you in the face.
Yeah.
And he did, because Vince stayed. And I don't know if Vince, he probably thought, okay, Bret's mad and he's going to punch me, or maybe we'll talk it out. I don't know what Vince was thinking, but I know there are people that think, oh, it was all done, it was planned, but because Bret had the documentary crew with him,
Wrestling with Shadows. Yeah.
But at that time, the documentary wasn't supposed to be just on Bret.
Yeah.
It was going to be on the family, because I remember them coming up to the house and filming like the Sunday dinners, and filming my mom and me and my sister Georgia at our jazzercise class, and because they wanted to show like the side of Helen Hart. They got a lot of footage. I mean, they probably could use it for a whole other documentary if they still have it. And then that happened, and there was definitely some new interest in it going in a different direction when Bret. It was announced that he was going to leave WWF to go to WCW,
Yeah.
and the people doing the documentary were like, "Okay, well that'll be interesting. We'll get footage on that, and we'll figure out how to put it into this documentary." And there was no when Bret announced he was leaving, it was in the headlines in Calgary and stuff. It wasn't like the documentary director, I think his name was Paul J. I don't think he was like, okay, we're going to go in a different direction. I think it was all just going to be included in this big documentary on the family. And then what happened was the Montreal Screwjob, and then it took on that all together took on a life of its own, and the documentary went in a different direction. But I remember Owen put his hand up to the people filming, because when you're in a calamity or something even that could be considered tragic,
Yeah.
That sometimes it's useful to have a film crew around, and other times it's just like you guys are a bunch of voyeurs.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
get lost. So I think that was what Owen was thinking, like, you guys get out of here. I don't, but people will capitalize on things when it's not them, that it's not their life that's being
Exploited.
under the microscope. Yeah, exploited. It's someone else. But that's so I'm so anyway, when it all came together, and then it was all captured, a lot of stuff for that Wrestling with Shadows documentary. I know some people thought, well, how convenient that they had the film crew there, but it really was just how it happened. They were there, but it wasn't intention. I mean, they were intended to be there, but it wasn't at the time. They weren't
That
thinking.
purpose. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was really, really bad, though. I remember Davey was he just said it was a shitty thing to happen to Bret. Owen said the same thing. And my dad kept saying, well, just, well, when it came down to it, that everybody was going to leave, because my dad was he was so insightful. He was just so insightful about everything. This, why I get so defensive of him and what he did for wrestling. It's like same thing when Owen died, but it's like, just everybody needs to take a step back here. And so when it was announced not announced, but when, Bret wanted everybody to leave.
Right.
And my dad said, well, I don't think that's a good idea. Actually, I think he didn't really have a great history with WCW anyway and now you're going to leave. And what he had to do to get out of that contract to support Bret, which is another reason why I get upset about what Bret says about Davey. It's like Davey was so loyal to him. He paid, and I've said it before, I don't want to be a broken record here, but he paid $100,000 US in early 1998. It was, kind of happening in December of 1997. But let's just say it was actually, the transaction took place in January of 1998. Davey paid $100,000 US to break his contract with WWF. That tells me, and I don't think Vince wanted him to go. If he wanted him to go, he would have been like, go, get lost.
Yeah.
But he didn't want Davey to go. And the irony, I guess, is the same day that that transaction happened, Owen, I mean, well, good for him for renegotiating his contract, but he renegotiated, and I believe it was on the same day that he signed his new contract. He got $100,000 signing bonus, US, and that was the same day that Davey paid the $100,000 to get out of his contract. But the what ifs if he had stayed. But to me, it was like WWF or Vince didn't want Davey to go. They didn't want Owen to go. I don't think, like, Jim wasn't under a contract, Jim Neidhart, at that time. He wasn't under a contract. But when you think about Davey's relationship with Vince, he wasn't just, he wasn't, this mediocre guy. He doesn't get enough credit. But Vince actually created a belt for Davey. That was the European title. And they hadn't had a new belt in 20 years. And Davey was he was playing his options. I do know that he was always, he wasn't going to go to WCW in 96. But he was renegotiating, his contract had come up. So he's negotiating his contract. And this was just a little bit after my nephew had died. And we were going to, Matt died of the flesh-eating disease in July of 96. And that's around the time Davey's contract was coming up for renewal or not. And it's like, well, we could stay in Florida or we could go back to Calgary. And if we stay in Florida, I'm right next door to Atlanta, and we could stay, and I'm going to get all these days off. I only have to work. And we decided to go back to Calgary, and we're going to, start a new life again in Calgary, because that was my home. Anyway, part of the thing that got Davey to, he wanted to stay with Vince anyway, but part of the negotiations, Davey had a pretty sharp lawyer. Again, Davey doesn't get enough credit for what a good businessman he was. He's just people just want to, remark on the negatives, let's say. So Davey's agent negotiated this deal, and out of that came the European title, and Vince said, I'll put that belt on you. And I believe it was in January of 97 that they put the belt on in Berlin. So they did it in Europe, where Davey was really, he was such a big draw. Over in Germany and France and England, all over Europe. So, it's just the things that he sacrificed to stand by Bret. And then when he got to WCW, it was like the contract and the negotiations pretty much were finalized mid-January, and by February, Davey had his head in his hands in our kitchen here in Calgary. He had his head in his hands, and he said, I made the biggest mistake. I never should have left Vince. I never should have left Owen. And then it just started to eat away at him. Like, it's kind of like, I've used this comparison before too, but it's like leaving your wife. You had your problems, but you always seem to work it out, and then you leave her for the stripper, and you find out the stripper's just gonna do nothing but ruin your life. And the
kind of better the devil you know than the devil you don't type situation.
Yes. And my dad kept saying at that time, I don't think that anybody's going to stay with WCW. I imagine Bret will come back to Vince too. And Bret was like, no, there's no way I'll ever go back to Vince, not after what he did. And my dad being a promoter, not that he would have done that, but he was just like, oh, I think everybody's gonna have a change of heart, and he wasn't like, well, you just wait and see. I'm right and you're wrong. He wasn't like that. He just kept saying, I think everyone's gonna have a change of heart. And sure enough, everybody did, but it just came about the hard way and in pretty much every example.
What was Davey and your dad? What was their relationship like with Vince?
Oh, good. Um, I remember there was one agent. I mean, this is just an example of how much my dad and how much Vince liked my dad. Um, so my dad was wanting to go back. I think it was in Calgary or something, and one of the agents was like, "Nope, you can't come back here, Stu." And Vince, he said, if Stu Hart wanted to walk in my wife's and my bedroom in the middle of the night, I wouldn't stop him. He said, Stu Hart can come back here anytime. And Davey had that kind of thing too. It's like, Vince is catering. Vince at that time, he had his own, whatever. It's like the wrestlers had their catering, probably similar food, but I think Vince had just maybe more steak or something. But
Right.
Davey would go right into Vince's catering, just like help himself. And it's like, you can't come in here. This is Vince's. And Davey's like, that's okay, Vince. He wasn't like arrogant or trying to, be disrespectful. He was just like, no, well, Vince isn't going to mind that I'm eating, we're breaking bread sort of.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was, they had a good relationship actually. And funny, it's not a funny story, Van, but it's one that I don't think that many people have heard. And it's been peddled, the what I feel is the wrong version. So when my mom and dad agreed to sell Stampede Wrestling to Vince McMahon in 1984, it was basically they wanted the TV rights to Canada, and Canada had the CRTC, Canadian Television Radio, CRTB, Canadian Television Radio Broadcasting. And at that time, if there's a Canadian show, that they're not going to put an American show in place of a Canadian show. It's only if there is no other, there's no competition. So you can't, they can't give, just say they couldn't give the NFL, the football rights for Saturday afternoon when we've got the Canadian Football League already in that spot.
Right.
They've got to take the national or the one from that country, with Canada is going to take precedence.
Yeah.
So Vince needed to get his TV on in Canada, which was then Maple Leaf, which happened after he. So the arrangement was he would buy Stampede Wrestling from my mom and dad for $1 million at that time, and my mom and dad were quite were especially my mom. She was really glad to have this, and she was so happy to finally be out of wrestling. I don't know about my dad was as happy, but he was pretty pleased with this price that they agreed on. And Vince was really interested in Davey and Dynamite because they have been like just superstars in Japan. And Vince was working over there a lot. And Jim Neidhart was already in the States, but he was interested in Jim. Jim was pretty big. And then Bret was the top guy and, had great things to offer as well. So then there's all the wrestlers that didn't get. It's not like, it was kind of just like, I'm going to buy your territory, but my dad, like, it was unwritten. It wasn't in a contract or you must do good things for my son-in-law, my two
Right.
sons-in-law, and my son and the Dynamite Kid, Davey's cousin. It was just part of the unwritten package. So there were wrestlers, and one of my brothers, my brother Bruce, wasn't. They said actually Bruce had the best deal of all. He was going to be responsible for the promotion end of all of Western Canada, and then into Seattle, which is just across the border from BC. But Bruce didn't want to be a promoter like that. He wanted to be wrestling, but they weren't interested in Bruce. They weren't, and they felt he didn't reflect the image that they had, like really big guys, and and Dynamite, everyone says that he had the small man complex. He actually didn't. He was solid, and he wasn't. There was other wrestlers in the company like Ivan Putski that were of similar size. Dynamite was just so phenomenal that they wanted him. So anyway, Bruce was too small, and his style wasn't what they wanted. So, but he wasn't happy with being a promoter, but he would have made so much money, but that wasn't where his heart was.
Yeah.
So this deal all went down with around the time Davey and I got married, which was October of '84, and the end of Stampede Wrestling and our wedding and big farewell. And so Davey and Dynamite are still doing their stuff in Japan, and they ended up going to the other promotion over there, All Japan Pro Wrestling. The two companies, there's New Japan and All Japan, and they have their tours head to head. And Davey didn't know. I truly think he didn't know that Dynamite had already worked out a deal with switching ships, jumping horses in the middle of not the middle of the tour, but because I just don't think Davey could have not told me that. Anyway, they switched, and Vince is like, I work with New Japan, and they just switched to All Japan. This is not good. And my dad was actually at that time working with New Japan, not All Japan, and it was a bad reflection on him too. Anyway, my brother Bruce was telling Davey and Dynamite, this is good, and Vern Gagne was still running the AWA.
Yeah.
And he was working with All Japan. It's like, no, this is going to be good, and we can, and you guys will be home all the time, because this, all the rumors. It's like, well, now that we're with the big WWF, we're never going to be home anymore. We'll never see a lot of drama and crying, and I'll be home. They were on crazy schedules though, like 42 days in a row, and double shots on weekends, but they were making good money, so Bruce, and anyway, what happened, from what I'm ascertaining, is Bruce got a bunch of guys together, and he went down. He's the one that applied for the wrestling license, and he applied for Stampede Wrestling to open up, and he was going to run it.
Okay.
And the commissioner phoned my dad or contacted him and WWF and said, just by the way, did you know that Bruce Hart has just applied for a wrestling license under the name of Stampede Wrestling? But Stampede Wrestling had a contract with WWF for no compete clause for a year. And so Vince doesn't, he knows my dad, but not the way he grew to know him. So he doesn't know, is Stu double crossing me?
Right.
Did he have his kid in there to go? Because that kind of thing happens in wrestling, though it would never have happened.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of Wild West, back in those days as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and so Vince, and at this time, Vince is under this arrangement with his own father, he needs to get, if he doesn't have the full amount, I don't know how many, it was a lot of money though that he needed to pay his dad, or he wasn't going to win his get to take over the territory or like the federation. So Vince was like, what, so I just remember the uproar, and my dad was just furious about it. And my mom, who, as I said before, really wanted to retire, and they had $1 million but Vince gave them a down payment of, I don't know, several thousands. And there's no way that my mom would have just been like, oh, well, the deal's, Vince just decided he didn't want to pay us, so that's okay. My mom would have fought like hell to get that $1 million if it hadn't been one of her own kids that breached the contract. And so when Bruce realized that he had breached it, the deal was off. Like, I don't need to pay you the $1 million because you broke the contract, Stu. And my dad couldn't, I mean, all he could do would be to retaliate against my brother Bruce.
Yeah.
Now, some people on the inside said, well, Vince still should have paid my dad. But it's like, well, maybe later when he got to know my dad and stuff. But at that time, it was, like you said, Wild West, and you
broke contract.
Yeah. So I hear it all the time that Vince, with all these, how ruthless he is.
Yeah.
But he wasn't in the wrong there, and had, I mean, you just look at it with, critically thinking. My mom, I mean, they had money, but some money, not $1 million, but what money they were making was being generated by running Stampede Wrestling every week. Now they don't have that anymore, and it's like, well, like there was just no way that. And my mom was always worried about money, because she didn't have it for being the era she grew up in the Depression, and I mean, she wasn't cheapskate or gonna double cross anybody, but to make a buck herself, she wasn't like that. They were just ethical people, but there's just no way that she would have just let that slide. But it was because Bruce had, if it had been a different person, and he hadn't been involved anyway, then as it came, they did run a show. It was Valentine's Day. Bad News Allen was on it. I mean, Bad News had nothing to do with it. He's just like, yeah, someone's opening up the promotion. Kerry Brown, Duke Myers, I think Ron Ritchie, guys that were part of Stampede Wrestling. I think Ron Ritchie was there, but guys that had been with Stampede Wrestling, when my dad was still running in '84, and they weren't like called to step up to the plate yet for WWF. And I know eventually, like, Bad News got called and was, they did a bunch of stuff with him but at that time, it's like, well, we don't have anything else going on in Calgary, and we all live here, so yeah, I'll go and do the show. But Bruce told Davey and Dynamite, and we had this meeting, and we're going to start running Stampede Wrestling again. And Davey, you and Dynamite don't need to work for Vince. You'll be home all the time, and then you do your Japan stuff, and then you can also go and work for Vern Gagne in Minnesota. And Dynamite was just indifferent enough to, he was like, he was entertaining it. And I remember Davey was like, he was kind of like, out of loyalty, but he's like, well, Tom thinks it's a good idea. We probably, I gotta go, I gotta look into it a little bit more. I can't just write it off but my dad was just livid, and he told Davey and Dynamite, I mean, I don't know what the phone calls were like with him and Dynamite, but I remember him talking to me about it and Davey, and said, "This you need to get, you know, you can't be doing that. It's going to be a failure, and you got this great thing with this new promotion, and and Vince is going to put the belts on you guys, and he's going to do." And he did it. Vince did do everything that he promised them, and so that I just wanted to say that, because a lot of people think that Vince, in light of Owen's unfortunate passing, and then they throw that in there too, that he was, just
that he was
just
kind of
so,
the enemy of I guess the Hart family all the way down to
it's not true.
type of thing. All right.
It's not true. And my dad and Vince had a very good friendship, and my mom and Vince did, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful to anybody that's in part of Owen's family. It was a terrible thing that happened to Owen, and I know what I know. Like, I wasn't at the trial. I wasn't involved in that, but I talked to Vince in person and I was there when he was talking to my dad. I wasn't like, just sitting in on the conversation, like the Careless Whisper, it's like just seeing but I was there for a lot of things that I saw go down between my mom and dad and Vince and Linda, and they had a good relationship, and through tragedy they I don't know, I think that just things get to be it's like who has the louder voice. Again, I think of what's been said about Davey, and who's alive and who's not, who's got the big platform. I've got some followers, and other people have millions of followers, so people might listen to the people that, but it's just a lot of
it's kind of like I think some people like for argument, Bret Hart's fans will be Bret Hart fans no matter what, because it's kind of fills this nostalgic void of them growing up where he was the hitman. He was it kind of made up their childhood. If Bret could get a gig or something, I mean, I'm sure he'd be invited with open arms to do something at NXT to develop this generation. I mean, I can't think of two better people than Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart working in tandem to develop the new generation. And I just, I don't know if he's been approached for something like that. Who knows? But in any case, with regards to Owen, I mean, I still remember, I think it was 1999 when the accident happened. The one thing that kind of that stuck with me is I thought that creative dropped the ball. They had that stupid gimmick. I mean, Owen to me was extremely entertaining. He was a great heel. He was great on the mic. He was a great wrestler. And I think Jim Ross has said the same thing. He doesn't understand how creative couldn't have done more with Owen than what they did.
To put Owen Hart with his amazing skills in the middle of any card is silly. It's illogical. So yeah, I think we missed the boat on that deal. Owen should have been elevated more and had a bigger role.
Do you remember when he was the Black Heart and he did that interview with Vince? He was all dressed in black and he had a bit of a beard.
Yeah.
And when I saw that, like, I got sort of chills. Was like, wow, this is so real. I really, and I thought, where is this going to go? And then it just I don't know.
Up. Yeah.
I do not know why they went that way. It's just, And then they had him doing this, just they had him like in two characters. He was like, the blue blazer and fooling the fans that it wasn't really Owen Hart. And then it's like, okay, but
And I mean,
there just didn't seem to have a lot of like you said, the creative dropped the ball there. I don't know what they were thinking. I don't know whose idea it was.
well, supposedly it was the start of the Attitude Era. Owen was all about his family and stuff like that. He didn't really care about, WWE during the Attitude Era was pretty raunchy.
Yes, I was just thinking that word.
Right. And I remember, again, I'm not sure if it was an old Jim Ross interview where he said that Owen was presented with a storyline where he had to cheat on his wife. And Owen just wasn't into it. And then suddenly he became the Blue Blazer. Now, there are obviously stories going around that that was as punishment or whatever the case. But I mean, they could have done. Owen was a great heel, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just sad that he had great matches with Shawn.
I remember when prior to Davey's, what Owen had been, it was prior to when Owen died, but Davey had broken his back and he was let go from WCW, and just things were really, really going wrong for, it was just a really bad time, and then got worse and worse and worse. But Owen came to see Davey at the hospital because he was there as full-time for like 2 months. And he was saying to Davey, I think he thought, like, he didn't knock what was going on. He just said, yeah, they got me doing this stuff. It's easy. Still doesn't get paid the same whether I, you just kind of accept it. But at the same time, I think it's like I could be doing something with Davey. And if Davey, even if Davey can't wrestle, because we didn't know if he could or not, but, kind of like that movie The Blues Brothers, and they're going to get the band back together, like we'll get and who knows, maybe there's just a chance that maybe Bret will come back. Like, there's just the things that were kind of going on, but you don't even speak about it because it's like, Bret will never go back to WWF, don't even think about it. But you couldn't help but think, well, what happens if we do get do get Davey back there, and then maybe Bret, because Bret was definitely in fighting shape. Davey was not doing, his back was not good. So, and just that there were a lot of things. So Owen came to see Davey at the hospital and said, now that you're officially let go from WCW, let's see what happens if Vince would have you back. And Davey was like, I don't know if he would, because I, obviously didn't go down well with him and me either. And next thing you know, Vince and Davey are talking, and this idea of Davey coming back in some capacity, we don't know. It was like yet to be determined. And then Owen, and then he died, and it was, everything changed, and then that just inflamed the animosity, I guess, or the hurt between Bret and Vince. But it was just some really, really awful things that affected everybody in different ways. It really did. Like, Bruce, my brother Bruce, was opening up Stampede Wrestling again with my brother Ross around that time, and I remember all the wrestlers, the new guys. It was kind of like what Bruce had done in '86 when Vince did give my dad my dad could open up with Vince's blessing. Now this going back to when the whole deal got kiboshed.
Yeah.
And then he said to my dad, if you want to open up again, you can. And that was when Brian Pillman came on the scene and Chris Benoit and Owen, all sort of under Bruce's training. Bret was already, I mean, had it been different, Bret probably would have been a part of that as well. But Bret was already like becoming like a main event with WWF. So anyway, I think Bruce had it envisioned we're doing it again now in 1999, and we're going to start. And there was, the potential of my son Harry doing stuff. I mean, Harry was very young, but I know that Bruce was thinking along those lines. You get the grandchildren; they're all coming up at where we could at least start training them.
Yeah, I mean,
And then-
Natalia's had a
Yeah,
decent career. Tyson Kidd as well, TJ.
yeah, they were
Yeah.
all part of that. And then when Owen died, everything just took such a hit. Like it was so. Davey was sick. He was still in the hospital the night they ran their first show, but it had he was Calgary Stampeder quarterback at that time, Jeff Garcia.
Yep.
And he went on to become a Super Bowl winner. I think he went to San Francisco. But Jeff Garcia, he was front row at that show, and like it just there was so much promise. And I mean, at that night of the first show, it was like, gee, it's just too bad Davey's not here because he was in the hospital.
Yeah.
But there's good things around the corner. All that, like, there's just so much promise. And then Owen died, and everybody was just everything took such a hit that just the life was, everyone was carrying this sadness. And then there was this well, you can't go and work for, well, the only one that really was, well, Jim was under the microscope a bit too, but I think Jim was just not as scrutinized as Davey. But anyway, it was like, well, Davey, you can't go and work for him because he's, the things that they were calling Vince, which I don't feel were deserved. But yes, Owen died on while wrestling on one of Vince's shows. I'm not trying to sugarcoat it, but it was just a terrible, terrible, tragic accident. But now that it's like, well, what are we supposed to do? And I'm not trying to play a victim here. I don't,
Yep.
I don't like that when woe is me, poor me, feel sorry for me, but I don't know what Davey been let go by WCW, like fired. You can't work for us because your back is bad. And if you do get it fixed, give us a call. But until then, Owen comes in with like, a shot of adrenaline, like, I'll get you your job back with Vince. And he did. And then Owen died. And it's like, the the contract wasn't signed though. It's not like, but it's like, well, you can't. I mean, even if it had been, like, I wonder what people would have expected of Davey and of me. Would they still have said, well, you got to quit for him? I mean, that was kind of the mentality, if you even.
Well, I think, yeah, because I mean, obviously there were a lot of people that were still mad at Vince as well over the whole screw job thing,
The
right?
Montreal thing, yeah.
Right, yeah. So this probably just escalated and brought up that again, that type thing. I mean,
Yeah.
I did a deep dive on the Owen Hart thing with that snap buckle that was faulty, that type. Yeah, it was. I mean, it was. And again, there's so many stupid conspiracy theories where they
I
think
know.
Vince did this. Vince murdered Owen. I mean, it's so freaking ridiculous.
I know. I know.
And
I like to go down rabbit holes. I
Yeah.
do, but that one is not that rabbit hole is not a rabbit hole that
It's ridiculous.
going down. It is. I've heard that from people close to me that it's like, no, that, well, why did he name it Over the Edge? It's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know why there are, I don't know lots of things, but that was not, there's no conspiracy theory. That same with the Montreal Screwjob. But some people will argue with me that, oh yeah, that was something that, Bret was in on it. My dad was in on it. It's like, no. And no to Owen. It was, I've heard the craziest things, even
Yeah.
like, Owen's still alive. It's like, oh yeah, he's, he just watching his kids grow up from, a camera or something. Like, it's just, anyway, it's so, I guess people just want to have some kind of answers to how such a sad thing could happen, and
It is strange though. I think it's kind of a bit of an unhealthy obsession. Do you guys still have a relationship with Martha at all, Owen's wife?
I haven't spoken with Martha since Owen's funeral, but she's doing, I mean, she started this thing in Calgary. It may be beyond Calgary, called the Owen Hart Foundation.
Yes.
And she does some pretty remarkable work with that, and helping people get who are struggling. I think families in general. I don't think it's like one sole person struggling, but helping them to get a home, or subsidizing them. Even she does good things with that, and their kids, I haven't seen them either. Which is too bad, but they're doing well. One is a lawyer at Oj, and Athena is doing some stuff in Australia, I believe, as a fitness instructor. So I wish that things were different. I don't know. I don't know. I heard Martha said that she had forgiven, members of the family for, and it's like, oh, okay.
I mean, we don't have to get into that. That's actually a bit personal. Yeah, it's got nothing to do with the public, really.
She was pretty crushed. I mean, I don't blame her at all. I mean, that doesn't even, but it was, it's same with, it's not the same way with when Davey died, but when you lose your dad and your husband, and in my case, and I'm not trying to like bring this all back to me. It's just when Davey died, though, he and I had reconciled, and I don't know what that was going to look like. Like I can't say, oh yeah, we were gonna, we had a wedding date picked out, and we were gonna, everything was. I know there were gonna be challenges just from, but there were things talked about that, him going back. Well, not him. Well, he and Harry would have gone back. Harry was 1 year from graduating, and it just seemed like a natural shoe-in for Harry and for Davey to go with Harry to WWF. And that, I don't know that was going to happen with Davey and me not being together. The company that he had been keeping, and also the company I had been keeping, was just all around evil.
Right.
Vipers, blood-sucking parasites, toxic, horrible people. And we got rid of that. And if there was any room for them in Davey's WWF career, then why didn't his career get going against, get some traction while they were with him. It's because that was he was not in a good place with them. So anyway, he and I had talked just before he died about, my dad was getting, he was like 87, the idea of leaving Calgary to go back to Florida. It just seemed like that was the best place for us. But, just the elements in Calgary were such that Davey needed to, and I felt it would be better that we just got away from the whole scene. And, but there was and Davey's father, I know would have been happy to see us back in Florida because he loved Florida. But anyway, it didn't happen. Although just to clarify that, we were thinking what will happen if we left right away. Like what would happen to my dad? Like not like my dad didn't have lots of people taking care of him or noticing what he needed and stuff. He had, but I think that was just, but anyway, it was, so just getting back to Martha, and it was just, when I lost Davey this second time, it is still, I still have such a hole in me, such a vacuum, empty spot that nobody can ever replace. And I know that even though I haven't spoken to Martha in, since 1999, I know that she has this spot in her that nothing has ever filled. It doesn't matter, because she and Owen had a very special relationship. And I knew Martha pretty well. I know she was very devoted to Owen, and it's just really sad, this how it all went. And we were all friends back then, I know she was pulling for Davey to get well again, but then then you get just people that sort of take control of the steering wheel, and I'm not saying Martha didn't have control of what was in her heart, but when sometimes you get people who have other reasons for keeping you in the fight. And so with my mom and dad, and the thing with Vince and the settlement, I know Vince was not, what he was saying to me and my sister, one of my sisters, was he wanted to see something go towards my mom and dad before they got too much older. I mean, and Owen's death hit them so bad. It did hit everybody, but he said he couldn't understand why nobody was talking, because Martha's side didn't want a settlement. They wanted the company shut down.
Right.
That was like they're gonna close the whole thing.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, I don't know that Owen would have wanted that. Those were his friends. But I mean, I'm summarizing, and there was a lot more than just, oh, I want the company shut down. But I guess they were hoping to get like $250 million, and I up to a point of so many millions, it's not even about money anymore, and it never was with anyone. I know Martha wasn't, but if you're hoping that you're going to get $250 million, and in the meantime Stu and Helen are, just because there was something in the lawsuit agreement, not in the lawsuit, but in the litigations
Mm.
that gave Martha's lawyers the right to refuse anything that came my mom's and dad's way. And my mom and dad, and my dad especially, said, I never wanted to profit from this in the first place.
Mm.
I never expected to get, I don't want to dime out of any of my kids.
Right.
But at the same time, Vince is saying, I want to give you and Helen something.
Yeah.
But every time I go to give, I'm not allowed to talk to you guys because of the lawyers for Owen's case.
Yeah.
They had the right to, so I mean, just hypothetically, Vince said, I want to give Helen and Stu $25 million right now.
Right.
The lawyers
Will block it.
Would block it.
Yeah.
They weren't even telling my dad or my mom. And at this particular time, Vince was also in a litigation with the Ultimate Warrior, who was one of Davey's very good friends.
Yeah.
He just, in this particular thing, there was Jim Hellwig was suing Vince over the rights to the name, and Jim had a comic book and he was wanting to do all these things, and Vince said, I've got the rights to your name. And they were sort of playing tag, I guess. They were often and suing each other and then friends, and I do think they had a real friendship deep down, and especially at the end of Jim's life. But anyway, at this particular time, Davey happened to be in the room when Ultimate Warrior and Vince were going over who thought of the name, and Davey had to give a deposition under oath, and Vince's lawyer came to Calgary to talk to get it, and had mentioned that he had, they had offered my mom and dad yet another settlement. And again, I got to stress, my mom and dad never wanted anything. But having said that, Vince he's trying to give them money and also trying to offer Martha. But Martha's deal should have been separate from my mom's and dad's, but it wasn't. It was all part of the same thing.
Right.
And so Vince, the lawyer, it wasn't Vince, but the lawyer just mentioned it. I was at this meeting with this deposition, and I talked to one of my sisters about it, and then we brought it to my mom's and dad's attention. And even though my mom and dad knew now that there was an offer, they still weren't allowed to, because that was the agreement. But something happened, and it ended up where it all just came down like overnight. It was like, the lawsuits, Martha settled, and mom and dad are getting this much, and Martha's getting this much, and her kids get this, and it's settled. And Vince is found. Vince wasn't held as a murderer, basically.
Right.
So but somehow in all of this, it was like that somehow like I sold Martha out or something. And it's like, I never did anything of the sort. I don't even actually know how or why they settled when they did. It just all seemed to happen around the time that my sister and I had presented my mom and dad with this information. And then it was just like within a month that everything, I mean, I could have that a little bit, might have been a little bit longer, but I thought it was like very quick that things got settled. And I think that my mom and dad were needed it. They were at the point of almost having to sell their house because there were some things going on with the land across the highway that they were supposed to be entitled to money from the city of Calgary, and that turned into kind of like Davey's deal with WCW in 1993. It was like, well, that was your deal with that guy back in the 50s, Stu. It doesn't apply now. And, Davey and Bill Watts, it's like, well, that was your deal with Bill Watts, Davey. It doesn't apply to who's in charge now. So, we're not going to give you what he said you were going to get. So anyway, this thing with the land deal across the highway for my mom and dad turned sour, and this nest egg that they thought they had, also, that nest egg they were hoping they had from the $1 million with the wrestling in '84, which didn't happen. They just, and then they never asked anybody for anything, but it's just like, well, here's like a really tragic thing that happened.
Yeah.
But somebody is trying to offer our mom and dad some money so that, I remember though, man, just like the ideas of some people and the close circle was like, well, Stu and Helen should sell the house anyway. It's getting too big for them. And it's like, they don't want to sell the house. They don't want to go to a little condominium and have the 40 grandchildren, visit them on certain days. That was not my mom and dad. Some people look forward to that and getting into a little condo, and they have one car and they don't have to do their yard work anymore. But that was not my mom and dad, and they lived in their homes until they died, basically. But
I mean, it's kind of sad that house isn't in the family anymore, right? Because it's
yeah,
almost kind of like a wrestling museum. In a sense, I think it could have been converted into almost like a landmark.
oh yeah, it's something now where it'll never be torn down. But
Okay, good.
But that doesn't mean that they can't. The guy that someone buys it, someone could turn it into two condos or something.
Yeah,
It's still standing, but it's you can live in the famous Hart House and 800 square feet of luxury living and hardwood floors, and live in the legendary. It's like, no, that house, when I see it, it's still, they've renovated and done. They've spent a lot of money to upgrade things, but when I go by the house, and I've said this in speeches and stuff, it just seems so lonely. It does. There's no kids. There's no school buses, because that's what my dad had, school buses to transport the wrestlers around in.
Yeah.
Ended up getting like 2 school buses and a Greyhound bus. And my mom was saying, you don't need all those buses. Like, we don't have, but he couldn't resist a good deal. So and then they had all the Cadillacs, and it just, my mom and dad were so, just so different. They were real, which is why they ran a wrestling business.
You're right. Yeah.
They like to do things their own way. And, if you want to have the hoods up on your Cadillacs and, have 10 dogs in your yard, because then that's what the Harts are going to do. I don't mean to sound so arrogant about it, but that was kind of we were kind of, in a way, a little bit, okay, so we had the 20 acres and it was rural property. So the rules, when they started developing, getting close to my dad's house, he had the rules from when it was an acreage in the country. So they couldn't, while it was still under our ownership, even if it had gone on to someone else, we would have been able to grandfather the no restrictions. So, they might have, I know some of the neighbors that lived in the condos next door had complained that they didn't like the all the wrestling going on in the ring. It's like, oh yeah, like just the way that my family were. It's like, oh yeah, well, we're gonna, instead of practices on Saturday and Sunday for 2 hours. We're going to have them Wednesday, Saturday, and Sunday for 6 hours, and and bring all your dogs and your kids, and we're going to have a barbecue, and we're going to, it was just, I think, when you brought it, asked me in the beginning what it was like to grow up in the family, and I said it was unique, but I just love that kind of, I don't want to tell anybody what they should do, and I don't want them telling me what I should do. Just leave me alone. But to be able to have that, though, like, yeah, we got a wrestling ring, actually 2 wrestling rings in the yard, and yeah, we've got an incinerator in our house, and my dad's got well, it was just
Unique.
yeah.
Very unique.
Yeah.
What was Davey like outside of wrestling? What was he like away from the ring? What outside of the ring?
Oh, he was hilarious. He was a combination of well, I mean, he had that very dry British humor, like Faulty Towers.
Yeah, yeah. John
Cleese. He was and he was a good impersonator. And Harry and Georgia, our kids, are too. He had a soft spot for kids who had challenges.
Right.
So his sister Tracy had some challenges, and then she had cancer as well. I think she had it since she was a baby, and he was very compassionate towards kids with challenges, like a real, and very generous. He loved to take care of things. Like, I just don't see that anywhere now in my family either. But if you thought you were suffering or in need of something, he'd help you. He'd buy it for you or get it. Or if like, if you wanted to go in the back, like, just remembering like my sister Georgia and she and her husband BJ had the gym downtown. They had 4 kids, and come to the back to the WWF shows, and they'd want to see some of the, go backstage, and it would be like, some people, when Davey wasn't on the show, family didn't go backstage, but when Davey was on the show, it's like, if you try to stop Davey, he'll like plow you down. And he was a gentle giant, but
yeah,
it's like, no, my sister-in-law and her 4 kids and their friends want to come backstage and say hello to Andre the Giant, or just sit there and watch me tying up my wrestling boots. Then they're gonna, and they're not like in the dressing room. We're not breaking kayfabe here, but it's just these. Right. And he was just, he was just such a good guy. My kids missed out on, like, it's just too bad how things went at the end. Okay, yeah, there was some addiction problems. I never denied that. Davey never denied that. It has nothing to do with SummerSlam 1992, and it affected our marriage, and there were so many things that happened when, like, I'd like people to know that when he broke his back in 98, or when that thing, that fall brawl happened, and then his sister Tracy died in November. Then I had an episode, an event. I don't know what to say, but it was not good at all. I was just having then he did rehab.
And this was before, this was after Owen, right?
Yeah. No, this was before Owen.
Was that just before Owen? Yeah.
Just
It's a
before
lot of
Owen.
stuff at once, or in close proximity. Yeah.
Yeah, one thing after another.
Right.
And I'm not trying to use that as an excuse for my extremely bad judgment and how I conducted myself at that time. But
Right.
I was completely it's almost like we both got taken over by demonic
Sure.
entities.
Yeah.
I don't know how, just so yeah, so that he did his rehab. He did that. He was very willing to do that. Went up to Grand Prairie, northern Alberta, and did this rehab. And his mom was dying. I think she worried so much, and I think after Tracy died, I remember she had an ulcer for a long, long time, even before Tracy got sick again. But I think anyway, she got stomach cancer, but she didn't tell Davey or me that she was that sick. He came out of rehab, and then they said, your mom is dying. You need to come home. That was really hard on him because he was close to her. So, his back, the idea that his career is over, his sister dies.
Yeah.
I end up trying to kill myself.
Right.
And it wasn't like, I'm gonna, lock myself in the bathroom and cry. I just was completely unhinged. He does his rehab. The day he gets out, he finds out his mom is dying, has days to live. He flies to England to bury her. And he just sat beside her body for almost, I think right till they took her out of the house to put her in the ground. And he still got this pain in his back, which, it's like this myth, like, oh, you do rehab and you're not going to need the drugs anymore. But the rehab didn't get rid of the pain, but none of us seem to be comprehending that. He had this addiction because he had this back pain, but all the years of pain that he was living through, he'd been in car accidents and, upside down turnbuckles,
right,
and doing stuff in Japan. And,
yeah.
Like,
I mean, again, I don't think a lot of people realize that the toll that profession takes on your body. And I mean, it's so many.
Yeah.
I mean, Tom Bennington as well, right? The Dynamite.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. For that Dynamite, it seems that all he ever gets known for is that Chris Benoit idolized him. Chris Benoit did these heinous things. Therefore, Dynamite's, and I even have said stuff that, of course, didn't get all of the story, just the salacious parts of it.
Right.
But the stuff that Dynamite, that he was a totally sadistic. He wasn't. I mean, I knew Dynamite from 1978. He was a guy that he loved wrestling probably more than anything, and gave it everything he had. Helped to build companies like WWF and Davey and all of them. All of them. It wasn't just them, but they worked. Then they didn't mind working those days back then. 42 days in a row. All of a sudden it's like, oh, you got to pay your taxes, and you got to do this, and you got to get a red eye out of Calgary because you that's where you live. Like people just don't realize all the things that these guys did back then.
I mean, the schedules were rough. I mean, compared to now, you watch, the WWE reality shows that started back in 2013 or 14 with, like, let's say, Total Divas or Total Bellas, that type of stuff, where John Cena is traveling, and a lot of the top guys are traveling in these luxury RVs, where you hear stories from Jim Cornette or whoever, Kevin Nash, where they used to get the rent like this van, pile a bunch of guys in there, go from town to town after they
Yeah.
just finished a 20-minute match or whatever. And that was like day in, day out.
Yeah. No seats in some of these vans. It's you're sharing the van
Yeah.
with the ring equip, like the ring,
Yeah.
dismantled ring, and you're sitting on boards and chains and ropes, and I mean it's hardly comfortable to say the least.
Yeah.
You know,
And not staying in 5-star hotels and stuff. I mean, it's like motels, whatever.
No.
Wherever.
And they loved it. It was just such
Yeah.
a camaraderie. Yeah, and yeah, you'd have your road trip fights, and you know, two guys would in it, and then you still got to work on the same card with them. It's and it's just so different now. But I sure miss it, and I feel like I don't know. Maybe I'm just in like a time warp, but I just feel like if Davey was still here, and Dynamite, but I just feel like he'd be right in there, like still be the guy you could give your 8x10. Although, people nowadays were like, what's an 8x10?
Right.
But, I do everything digital or just send an email, but for just work with me here, that Davey would be the guy you could give your 8x10 picture to today. And he'd give it to Hunter, or he'd give it to somebody in the office that would be able to look at it. And he was just such a good guy. I think he'd be training. I don't know, maybe I suspect, I guess, like in my world, if it could have, he would have gone on to, we would have moved, romanticizing this, but he would have gone back to Florida. Harry would have taken up, carried on with the way he was in Calgary, but and gone on to do things, and he would have mentored Harry. Like Harry never had that the way Davey had it when he came to Calgary. I mean, that of course there was me, being able to, as young as I was, but I could still talk to my mom and dad about things.
Well, or an example, Randy Orton and his dad.
Yeah.
Bob Orton, yeah, it's different. I mean, I know Harry and Randy wrestled, with his tenure in the WWE.
I wish I would still love to see that.
Yeah.
Like a program with Randy and Harry. They would have such phenomenal matches. Just like things that, I mean, I don't know why they're not happening. I mean, it's just why I'm not saying that, that Harry isn't doing his dreams aren't coming true with because he's an international wrestler and making a very good living. But I
think that there's an audience that is still like myself. Like I don't really watch today's product because it's too exposed. There's zero mystery. Like when we were talking about kayfabe back in the day, where you knew it was scripted, but you didn't. It's certain that it was like, was that real, or was it? You don't know. Now today, everything is out in the open. But I think there would still be kind of like a fan base that would want the next generation of a previous generation.
Some really big missing ingredients here, and they just seem to like.
It's gotten stale.
It has.
Yeah.
Like, okay, you've got all these potentials. Like, okay, you could, like, say you had Harry, he could wrestle Cody Rhodes.
Right.
There'd be,
Legacy.
Randy Orton. Yeah.
Yeah.
And, Harry and Drew McIntyre, that get a British thing. Or those are just three off the top of my head, but if you brought in like that with we'll just leave Drew on the side for a second here.
Right.
Just talk about Randy and Cody.
Yeah.
If you had like people would watch that, they'd want to know more about who's Cody's dad, who's Randy's dad,
Right.
who's Harry's dad, who's Harry's uncles,
Right.
the Dynamite Kid and Davey Boy Smith and
Yeah.
Bret Hart and oh wait, Jim Neidhart, he's Natty, he's Natalia's
Right.
dad, and
Exactly.
you bring in, you would invite or re-educate or educate
and re-attract that audience from that time.
Yeah, because like the people from that audience aren't watching it anymore.
No, I don't think they are. I'm not. To be honest, I'm still. If I watch something, it's old stuff, like SummerSlam '92, like the '96 King of the Ring, or WrestleMania 12, or something like that. But the new stuff is.
Yeah, I just don't find it attractive. It's like the way I look at the way some people appear today. It's like that's attractive. Like
yeah, but it's even the stuff they say on the mic and the storylines. You can tell that that's not really what that person wants to say. There's no shoot promos being done anymore. Everything is, it seems like scripted down to the letter.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, it's
yeah, it's so very.
Yeah, like Stone Cold, right? Austin 316 was on the fly because he heard who's their announcer? Michael Hayes told him, okay, he just got, and this was also the Milwaukee thing, 96 King of the Ring, where he just got back from hospital from getting kicked by, I think, Mark Merrill. So he got, yeah, gets back.
Got stitches.
Yeah. Michael Hayes tells him, okay, Jake cut this religious promo, and then Austin 316 was born, and it just came naturally. But it just like, nothing naturally is happening in the WWE anymore.
No, it's so forced, and it's I don't know. It's like.
I think it's because there's so many sponsors now, and because it's a public traded company. I don't think they have the freedom to say what they want to say, and all.
Yeah.
Plus, Vince is gone.
Yeah, that's a big.
That's a big thing.
I miss what Vince did in wrestling. I really do. I think it was personal for him. It was his company. I don't think he wanted to leave it in the first place.
Yeah.
And like I don't know who's, I mean, who am I to say anything? I've got, I'm, I don't have much to, maybe I don't have the right, although I feel sometimes I just, from my perspective, I guess.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's so sanitized, and at the same time, it's like it's I don't know, it's like not cookie cutter, because it's like nothing makes sense. It's like nothing is, but at the same time, it's just like so. There's just no intrigue. I don't feel like there's, and it's not.
Yeah, I think a part of that is the emergence of social media as well, because no one knew what guys like Davey, Tom Bellington, The Undertaker, no one knew what they were doing in their personal life or away from wrestling. Now you've got Instagram, you've got TikTok, you've got all this stuff. Plus they've made like a reality TV from, LFG with the whole NXT developmental thing. This Unreal series, which I've watched because, I mean, I guess I'm just curious so I watch it, but it's overexposing the business. Like you
Yeah,
said, there's no mystery. Go on.
yeah, yeah, they have overexposed it. There's
Yeah.
no mystique. And it doesn't matter how flashy the costume is or how many pointless high spots that these guys are doing.
Yeah, and there's a lot of
It's
them, yeah.
oh, like I
Yeah.
remember like guys just like were actually working a hold, like they knew the fundamentals,
Yeah.
and like there was this guy that was training some people locally, and he actually told me that the wrestling that my dad taught was crap, and I wanted to punch him in the face as hard as I could. I think, but he told me that he said, "Oh, that I don't teach that kind of wrestling. That to me that wrestling is a lot of crap. I teach them it's a, and and he's got these kids coming in and paying money to it's like all about the yeah, that's good to have a ring entrance and build some suspense up. Like
Mm.
think of the Undertaker coming down to the ring with Paul Bearer and the music and the yeah, that definitely gives some atmosphere and or the Bulldogs with Matilda or the music
Right.
or Sean and but it's like wow, like okay, we got these entrants and now with this all this stuff on the mic and then some high spots that don't make any sense and nobody they're still getting hurt because they're doing
Right.
but none of it it's like
Doesn't mean
do
anything.
you no do you know how to hit does anyone know how to hit a turnbuckle anymore? Like
Yeah.
I remember like Brett running into the turnbuckle like
Like
oh
face
like,
first always.
yeah
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah like can anybody just do that
Mm.
anymore? But no, I gotta get my you know these crazy high spots or really these stupid gimmick matches and there's just like no fundamentals and I don't know where it goes. Like okay, we got all these contracts and we're nationwide or international and we're on grossing more money than ever, but at the same time it's like I don't know if you're killing this. It seems like is it gonna finally tip? Like
I have to say, I mean, with regards to all the controversy surrounding Vince McMahon, and I don't know what your thoughts are with that, this whole Janelle Grant thing, what's happened there, and all the rest. I mean, that's where a lot
I
of the stuff
think
started.
there's two sides to that. I've only seen her side, and
I saw her side, and and I don't know, how can I put this very diplomatically? Let's just say that I think there's two sides to every story as well.
yeah,
Yeah.
I
Um,
yep, I feel and everyone was quick to throw Vince under the bus and say I just it's like I don't know. I have to wonder how you would do what she said happened to her for all that time and not and
well, the
like
only
if
reason it came out is because he allegedly stopped paying her.
because she
So,
breached and I heard I mean I don't know. I heard that she 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 breached that because she had broken the non-disclosure because she discussed it with somebody and he said I'm not paying you because you broke the you broke our
yeah, the NDA.
NDA
Yeah.
and then but who knows she might have been told to do that like
I
she
mean,
was a legal assistant before she was someone might have said you can make a lot more money than $3
right.
million if you
Yeah.
break this non-disclosure
Yeah.
and let it and we're looking to get rid of Vince anyway because he's we're buying this company and he doesn't want to leave because
It
he
was.
still felt like it was his company
Yeah.
or he wanted to be a part of it
I mean, look, Vince obviously, I mean, he's not a saint, but I mean,
No.
by any stretch of the imagination, but you know, with regards to business and what he's built, yeah, it's a pity it kind of went the way that it did. But in any case, Diana, just as a last question, what do you think Davey's legacy, what do you think his legacy is? And what should he be remembered for?
He was he's one of the he's understated. He's understated. He could do anything. I'm like my brother Brett was one of the best that I've ever seen.
Right.
But
Yep.
Davey could do what Brett could do, and but let's just say not. I won't pinpoint Brett, but there are lots of things that lots of wrestlers could do that Davey could do, but they couldn't all do what Davey did. He was so strong.
Yeah.
He was naturally strong. He came from good genetics.
Yep. I remember his suplexes, man, when he was like holding guys up for like what seemed like minutes. And then
if you can ever find it, you should look up, or anyone watching this, to look up, you know, Davey when he wrestled Eli or Jacob the Blue, Eli and Jacob Blue.
Yeah.
They were like 6'7". They had this wild hair, and they were big guys, over 300 pounds, and it was hard to suplex them. You know, same with he had Man on a Mission, Mabel. Oh, and Sid, yeah. Suplexing Sid was, that was hard on his back because Sid was so tall.
And he held him up there for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was I remember in WCW '93 he was suplexing Sid a lot, and Vader, but he that was part of the beginning of where he said he could really feel his back starting to, but you know, he'd get a guy up, like he was so strong. He'd get and very innovative. He could wrestle like so many styles. He did the snake pit in England and all the training there. He actually had like a great wrestling career before he ever came to Calgary. So a lot of people are like, you know, he broke into wrestling in Calgary. It's like, no, he was Big Daddy's tag team partner in England when he was like 15. He wrestled in South Africa with Steve Peacock as his partner, and stayed in Soweto, which was a really big deal in 1981. Steve
Really?
Peacock was married to somebody who lived in, so he was, and Steve was blonde, and like really blonde, and Davey was down in Soweto with him.
Wow.
And you know, he had all kinds of experiences before I ever met him, and then he came to Calgary, and just like he paid his dues. He loved wrestling. He should be remembered for how he and Dynamite, but then Davey on his own, really did revolutionize it's what wrestling became. But a lot of that is just it's just like they don't get that recognition. That there is a bit of it, but I think if Harry was more more on TV on a regular, like you got to look for Harry's stuff, like what he does in Japan. You almost have to speak Japanese to know what to type in to find his stuff. But Harry, I think Harry could really symbolize a lot of what Davey did for wrestling if he was back on mainstream, or maybe that will happen. But I just, as a note, for the record, I even have it here just so I can get my exact wording.
Yeah.
So this is from Davey's, the toxicology report. when he after he died. So like I got it here.
Okay.
It was they took three tubes of blood, three tubes, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, over 10 tubes. So urine, blood, and fluids from Davey's system. And they tested for alcohol, morphine, acidic drug, cocaine, cannabis. I can't even pronounce some of these drugs that they tested. And it says none detected, none detected, no drugs detected, no drugs detected, none detected, none detected. Detected trace, that was for the cannabis. So that could have been secondhand.
Yeah.
In my opinion, it was. None detected, none detected, none detected. And then says bottle of injectable steroid found at scene confirmed to contain testosterone. No testosterone detected in blood specimen. So somebody put a vial of testosterone next to his body, but there's no testosterone in his system.
Right.
So so when Davey died, I was that was the information, and I wasn't his wife at the time, so I was not privileged to know what was on the toxicology report, and neither were our kids because they weren't 18. So back like in 2025, I've got the toxicology report, and I don't want to like at first, it's unpleasant to read about, they got to open up his brain, and they did, and you kind of just like go over it quickly, read a little more as with each time you look at it. Nobody phoned the ambulance for I don't know how long. His body was cold and blue. So how long was his body cold and blue? You don't just go cold and blue in in a half an hour. The person that was with him, he died under her watch, and I don't know what she was doing, but I know she wasn't happy with the fact that Davey and I were getting back together, and she was. I don't even know what happened that day, but he was with me from about 6 o'clock earlier, about 6 o'clock Friday, May 16th, I guess it was, that he was with me. And then just over 12 hours later on her watch, he was dead. And her report to the police was really it's ridiculously inadequate. And she's got another person in there with her, helping her answer the questions. This person's last name isn't even taken down. Her address or where this all happened's not taken down. None of it. It was just like, well, he had testosterone next to his body, a vial of it next to his body. So, and also that in the report, it said that he had next to him these 3 really strong muscle relaxants, but they're not in his blood. So what kind of picture is? So when he died, it was like, yeah, it's unfortunate because he was clean for like a few months, and we were like, why did he go off with her that night? Just to fall back,
Right.
like, and it it's like, well, so even when Davey died, when we did Davey's service, because his body was this girl was also trying to have his body cremated and was saying she was his wife, and she wasn't. at all. She was married to somebody else at the time, but she was trying to have Davey cremated, and then his body got flown back to England, and then we did the Davey's service, and like the consensus was, oh well, he went back on, he did drugs, and that, and what a shame. And then you find out all these years later, he wasn't, he didn't, he wasn't. And that stupid girl, she actually did, she could have had a service any time, because Davey's body was, eventually flown back to England. She could have done a service for Davey at any time if she wanted, but she picked the same day and basically time frame that Harry, Georgia, and I had Davey's service. It's like, and then she lived for a while. She died in January of 2020, but to the day she died, she never gave us, or Harry and Georgia, any of whatever she had accumulated of Davey's in the I don't know, year and a half that they were together. She never. So when he died, he was living in some old lady's basement, and he was going to come back and live with me because he couldn't live. That wasn't his idea of existing, was living in this old lady's basement. But like we had some pretty nice furniture, and then all of his clothes and what gear we hadn't just kept, or Harry hadn't. It's just like all these things, but she had it and never gave it to Harry and Georgia. She was very selfish about all of that. And for somebody, if you didn't have something to hide, why didn't you? Okay, so she didn't like me, obviously. She didn't want Davey, but she and Davey were done. They were over, and that was part of his rehab. It's like, I got to get her out. But I don't know why he went with her. I don't know if she was, if he owed her money and she said, you need to do me a favor, or she got into some trouble and said, you need to come out and help me with this one thing. I don't know what it was, but in her report, it was very, very grand. Oh, well, we were going to go on an airplane ride. And it's like, with what money? Whose money were you going on this? And I just don't buy it. Where are the plane tickets for this one-day airplane ride that you guys were going to go on? It's just really a lot of but when I started to speak out about some things in the last little while, I got like, whatever, like, bring it on. Like, I don't want to fight with anybody, but people have ridiculed me for, she's, she didn't like, she said all these things about Davey in her, hideous book. I did say terrible things about Davey. I regret the things that I said about Davey. That book was written when Davey was alive. He saw the book. We talked about the book. He told me, like, he wasn't like, oh, well, that was a great book. He just said, I understand what happened to you. That person that wrote your story, she didn't like me. She didn't like your family. I don't think she likes you. And, I feel bad for you that happened, because he said, I can live with the shit that you said about me, you know, because I know that's not true, but
Right. The public doesn't.
but I feel bad for you because you got to deal with your family and all the and that was right around the time that my mom died. So he got himself clean, and that toxicology. It also says, I don't have it here, but I don't have it in the papers I've got here, but of the things that they did detect in his system, there were only traces in his hair.
Right.
So if he was doing what the world seemed to think, he died a drug addict, which is unfair because he didn't, he wouldn't have had it, you know, traces in his fingernails, like where they clip on the ends. That would have been like the last, it would have been, you know, in his blood, in his urine, in his fluids, and it wasn't. So whatever they said they found at the scene of when he died, I suspect it was planted, and I suspect there was a lot of planting going on in that time while he was dead, and that's why they didn't phone the ambulance, and a big scenario was being staged to accommodate her. Like, if I can't have him, nobody else can, and I'm going to make sure that his reputation is smeared, and then I'm going to be the, you know, come across as the grieving widow, although that's what people have said about me, you know, oh well, she's you know, Diana's a despicable and a piece of shit. It's like, whatever you want to say about me, but I know what was going on between Davey and me when the day he died, and I can't change that, how things went when things fell apart with him and me. But through our whole time together, we were together 20 years, we went through some really hard things, and we all never ever, it just, you know, despite all there were we never ever split up. Nothing phased our marriage until after, like, when he broke his back and then he started to lose his focus.
Yeah.
And I was mad at it, like, you know, you know, you got to get, you know, like our marriage, that's when our marriage started to suffer. And then when I filed for separation, I thought for sure that was straighten him out. Like, that's gonna, and I had a lot of well-meaning people suggesting, you know, that's what you should do. And it's like, never in my wildest dreams did I want to separate from Davey, but that isn't what's represented in the facts. I filed for divorce, and that's when this drug addict, and she was a drug addict. I don't care what people that know her want to defend her and say she was, you know, a great mother, and it's like she was a drug addict, and she saw that opportunity, and that year and a half that she was with Davey, things just went really bad for him, and they went really bad for me. I had my own demon, you know, in my life too, telling me not everybody was bad on both sides, but
Yeah.
anyway, whatever happened to Davey that day, she should have told, and nobody knows, you know, but if she was a good person, she should have told Davey's father and Harry and Georgia what really happened, not you know, well, silence, actually.
Right.
She never phoned us at all. She did talk to Davey's dad, and he suspected something was very nefarious there. But you know, till the day I die, I will defend Davey for what the amazing wrestling career he had. He was a good father. He was a very loyal friend. He's just one of the most unforgettable people that I've ever had the privilege to know. And I wish he was still here now. You know, but he's not. But you know, I can't, you know, I can't undo my book. A lot of things in that book were taken out of context or shouldn't have been discussed at all, and it was someone's misinterpretation of my life. The fact that he had, you know, we were talking about, you know, like our plans for the future, and then, you know, it wasn't like, you know, he'd come to the door and I'd open the door this much and what do you want? Right? It wasn't like that. You know, there was absolutely some tumultuous times in that with these, you know, vipers draining both of us, and that made us, you know, they weren't the ones that. It's just like lots of things, you know. It's like you can be the person that's giving the ammunition, but you're not the one that's getting hit. You know, it's like not you don't have any stake in this, but Davey and I do. But you know, maybe it is somebody gets off on seeing this power couple, and I'm not just saying that like to fill my head up with. Like Davey was a good businessman. He had in his time that we were together, we had a landscaping company, we had a clothing line, we did the British Bulldog workout video.
Then squeeze the weight up as high as I can and squeeze the weight together.
Davey uses a lighter weight on this exercise because it is a warm-up exercise. And warming up is very important because it discourages pulling and tearing muscles.
Vince created the European title for him. He had won every belt that they had at that time. The only one he didn't get was the world's belt, which could have happened. But you know, there were people that didn't like that, and we were a nice, like a good-looking couple. We had a nice family, and you know that the little, might sound cliche, but the little home, the beautiful home on the lake, and you know, sometimes that can just make people envious or want to see you fail. And then when they see a little crack, I remember Chief Jay Strongbow's wife Mary told me that to watch out for. She said there are people that will, if they see a little crack in your veneer with you and Davey, they'll. This was in the 80s, but she said if they see that, she said they'll get in there and they'll try to pry that crack open, and just really be careful of who you tell your business to and who you associate with, who you let in, because they'll get in, and the next thing you know, it's, you know, she gave me an example of, it wasn't in her family, but you know, it was one wrestler, and his wife's friend kept coming around, and the girl went out, the wife went out to, and then the friend was there, and then she said that the wrestler had made a pass at her or something, and the whole thing was just totally made up, but and eventually that, you know, it formed this wedge. It created this wedge, and So, anyway, Mary Scarpa gave me that sage advice, but she was kind of looking out for me, although I just thought, oh, well, there's no problems here. But as we did gain more success and stuff over the years, it's like, yeah, well, yeah, don't I know it well, how it all unraveled. But thank God I did have that time with Davey at the end of his life, where we and for whatever reason he got in the car with that person, that girl, that night, the evening before he died. But I could have, I mean, one side of me says I should have said, no, don't, you can't go. And then the others, but would that have ended up in a fight but I never felt at that time, I didn't think he was getting in the car because he wanted to be with her. I felt like he was going with her because he was obligated in some way. Like he owed her, I thought maybe he owed her money or something. And he was going with her like, okay, I will help you with this one last thing. And then maybe she had in her head this, but I don't know. I really don't know why he died. I don't know. Because when they tested him, they didn't test to see if he was poisoned. They just tested him for street drugs.
Do you think there was foul play involved?
I do.
Really?
Yeah, I think there was something. I don't know. She was sort of like a witch. I don't know.
Right.
She's like, I don't know if you can actually die from arsenic, but I could see her doing, because she did do things like that. But putting things in, arsenic just to see somebody get a really bad stomach ache and stuff, and think it was funny. And then other people would be like, no, but she was just so smart. She knew what herbology could, it's like, no, she was an evil person.
Was this Andrea Redding?
Yep. That was my brother Bruce's wife.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, she was married to Bruce till the day she died and never separated from Bruce, and telling the person who took her statement that she was Davey's wife. And they drove to BC in Bruce's van, and I never got along with her in the 80s because I just had suspicions about her as Bruce's wife and why they were getting married. And albeit she was young when she married Bruce, but I believe that if it wasn't Bruce, it was going to be someone else, that she was looking for, like the type that latches on to the rock star when, they're 15 or something. And if the rock star wants to get out of it, then they're going to look like the bad guy. Because, well, why were you involved with this girl who was so young? So anyway, she and Bruce got married with a baby on the way. And nothing against their kids, but I imagine that even the kids know things that maybe they're not allowed to talk about, but somebody should have talked to Harry and Georgia about what happened. But anyway, and that I didn't get along with her. And I do remember when she came to see me after I tried to, take my life like an idiot. She came to see me in the hospital, and I thought that was kind of strange but I think she was feeling out the situation, seeing what's going on, and is this marriage in jeopardy? And I think she always liked Davey and liked Owen and liked Dynamite. It's just if there was a way she could get to somebody like that, go beyond Bruce. But she was never anybody that Davey was interested in, but because of the heat that she and I had,
Yeah.
and when Davey and I split up, it was like, that's going to really bug Diana if I get with her, and she's now moved on, and she's seeing somebody. So the best way to get to her is I'm going to, and I'm not in my right frame of mind, and she's not in her right frame of mind, and this girl's not in her right frame of mind. So let's see what damage we can do. Everybody's a big mess, and so once she got her claws in there, it was just and some of the biggest fights that I had with Davey were me going to see Harry in Georgia, and she wouldn't let me in to like pick them up, and it's like, well, where's Davey? And and then he kind of like sort of come to the door eventually, and by this time it's escalated, and I'm screaming at this thing, and then Davey's like taking her side and yelling at me, and this is just what she wanted. It's just what she wanted, and this same thing with the people on my side. It's just what they wanted, and then it's like, yeah, we could, but when Davey ran out of money, they had no use for him, and and that it's just, it wasn't about money with me and Davey anyway. It was, but it didn't really, I didn't appreciate seeing this thing go through, $500,000
Right.
of Davey's money that, he was not, he didn't want that to go to her, or her, whatever her indulgences. He wanted that to go to it was just really,
It was bad.
It was a toxic situation.
Yeah.
But anyway,
But
not anyway.
Yeah. I mean, look, nonetheless, I mean, you've lived an extremely interesting life. You've had a gateway into this world of professional wrestling, and I mean, being part of the Hart family is in itself I mean, it's a very unique perspective. I just want to say thank you so much I know we said we're going to do an hour. I think we've done about three about 3 hours now.
Sorry about that.
No worries at all.
Oh, well, I thank you for letting me be a guest on your show. I like your channel on YouTube. I've been watching it with Harry, and feel grateful to you for letting me have a chance to talk about my great life.
Yeah. It's very, very interesting. And again, thank you so much.